What?
Yeah.
Not yet. I'm ready.
Thumbs up.
So. I'll probably fail. Comp plan. There you go.
That, you're way down there.
What?
Way to go.
A really big roundabout.
Yeah, how are trucks gonna do that?
Pick it up.
This is like the one that's on a piece of canyon. Where it's like this far off the ground, so they just go wow, right over the top of it. Kind of defeats the purpose, cause then. But the one
this next year.
I is the opposite.
Yeah.
The traditional.
Yeah. That's what we have. Perfect. Much works better than you can.
Yeah.
It's
Take a breath.
odd vibe.
Between three of us, we can figure it out.
All right, okay.
Stuff at your mic.
Like to call to order the study session of March 24th, 2025 at 6:04 PM. First item on our study session business is Tacoma and Puyallup intersection conceptual design and budget. I call on engineering specialist Garisaman Singh and Public Works Director Michael Kosa.
Great, thank you for having us. I'll turn it over to Simran. He's going to walk us through the presentation and talk through the conceptual project.
Perfect.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to present on the Tacoma Avenue Overlay and Roundabout project. I'm going to start off the project with presentation with the project description. Project involved construction of a roundabout to improve traffic flow, reduce traffic congestion, and enhance safety for all road users. It also involves ADA curb ramp upgrades, comprehensive upgrades to existing curb ramps, ensuring full compliance with current ADA standards, and the walkability for individuals with disability. Pedestrian sidewalk improvements, improvement to pedestrian walkways, including widening and resurfacing to provide safer and more accessible sidewalks. Today or something or something.
Go ahead. I gotta turn on share.
Go ahead.
Sidewalks for pedestrians, which will conform to current ADA standards. Lastly, grind and overlay of Tacoma Ave, which is approximately 0.25 miles of pavement to restore the condition, improve driving, and extend pavement service life. Stop working. So before we dive further into my presentation, to request additional funds, I want to go over the advantages of roundabout over traffic signal. Roundabouts give higher level of service. So our design consultant, Parametrics, conducted a traffic study for both signal and roundabout option, evaluating traffic conditions in the year 2035 and 2045. Study results show that the roundabout maintains a higher level of service, that's A, through year 2045 with average delay of 9.2 seconds. Whereas for traffic signal, level of service significantly drops to F with an average delay of 92 seconds. Roundabouts tend to provide a continuous movement of traffic, thus reducing delays and congestion compared to waiting for signals. Since they keep the traffic moving, it leads to reduced fuel consumption and emission, giving us environmental benefits as well. Reduced severity of traffic collisions. Roundabouts are generally safer than signalized intersections, as they result in fewer accidents, especially T-bone and head-on collisions, as traffic flows in one direction only in the roundabout, and speeds are lower with further few conflict points for moving traffic. Cost effectiveness over time. Roundabouts often have lower maintenance costs as compared to traffic signals, as traffic signals require electricity, regular maintenance, and replacement of signal components. We did the math, and in 20 years itself, traffic signals cost almost $500,000 more than the roundabout. Cost comparison. As you can see, if you look at the slide at present, PSRC, our funding source, has funded only the design phase of the project, while right-of-way and construction phases remain unfunded for the project. As shown in the slide, additional costs are required for the roundabout during the design phase. We're also anticipating a right-of-way cost of $100,000 for the roundabout, with no right-of-way required for the traffic signal. Preliminary construction cost estimate is less for roundabout as compared for traffic signal. If we total up all the three phases, for traffic signal, total up to $2,280,000, and for roundabout, it's $2,190,000, $533. Total cost of roundabout is approximately $89,000 less than that of traffic signal. Let's talk about the increase in cost for design for roundabout. The increase in cost comes with additional design efforts which are needed to design a roundabout instead of a traffic signal. Additional traffic flow modeling and simulation is needed. Our consultant will need to perform additional in-depth traffic flow analysis and advanced simulation modeling to ensure roundabout design enhances traffic flow, minimize congestion, and improve overall traffic safety. Environmental permitting for replaced impervious surfaces. Coordination is needed for the environmental permitting process related to the replacement of impervious surfaces, which will ensure full compliance with local and state environmental regulations. Additional right-of-way acquisition maps and legal descriptions are needed for the roundabout. A detailed development of acquisition maps and legal descriptions is needed to further facilitate the smooth acquisition of right-of-way needed for the project. Extensive traffic noise analysis. Noise analysis is to evaluate the potential noise impacts with the goal of reducing noise levels is also needed for the roundabout. Go to the next steps. Requesting council to authorize a consulting agreement in the amount of $210,533 to be paid for additional design efforts for roundabout. And that brings us to the end of the presentation, and happy to answer any questions council and the mayor have.
A couple questions. Hey, thank you so much for explaining that. I have a couple questions, two questions. One of them is, can you tell me, when you talk about environmental permitting, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So we already have a road here. I'm assuming, are you widening the road and you're having to create more storm drainage, or what do you mean by environmental permitting, and what is the nature and the cost of that?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So environmental permitting, really the traffic signal circumstance was we have an existing roadway surface. We weren't really looking to do anything other than potentially overlay. So there really wouldn't be a lot of actual ground disturbance. Once you start to get into something like this, we're essentially changing the whole intersection. We're ripping up all the pavement and then replacing it all. And from an environmental standpoint, as soon as you have that pavement down to subgrade, you're essentially, that is your footprint of that you're influencing. And once you get to that, we will go over the threshold for the need to go through an environmental permitting process because of the federal funding we have in place. So it's a federal funding requirement that we will have to walk through a NEPA process. We would have had to do a very, very, very minimal NEPA process, but we'll have to account for any sort of stormwater offset requirements once we actually remove the pavement, even though we're replacing it in the same spot. Replace impervious surface is one of those things that trips the need for stormwater treatment and possibly detention. So that's the.
Yeah, if you have a chance, I'd love to hear it, not necessarily tonight. I'd love to know what the cost of that is, because I know those are extra costs, and I think one of the things we went to the legislature last week, and I think that some of the climate things are really driving up costs. I'm just curious what the cost is. And the second question I had was, we're doing a noise analysis on an intersection that's in an industrial area that's already, what, is that a requirement from somebody else, or are we making that requirement ourselves? Why would we do a noise analysis?
Falls also under our NEPA environmental review process. It should be a very small effort for the number of reasons that you mentioned there. But it is something that it's a requirement. Getting into this level of environmental review, you're going to have a noise report, which is not a very large dollar figure, but it's just something else that needs to be done, unfortunately.
Carla.
Thanks. Thank you. Nice presentation. There's a lot going on in that presentation right there. So I'm hoping perhaps one of you or both, can you help me understand or us understand why we need additional design efforts, the additional traffic flow modeling and simulation, and the additional right-of-way acquisitions and maps I'm trying to understand. So we've kind of got it planned out. So something must have happened that we have to go back and look at a few things. So that's what I'm trying to understand out.
Sir, you want to start?
Yeah.
I can start. You watch out, I'm gonna talk all night. So one of the items, we'll start with the right-of-way acquisition. You can see on this map, there's kind of some areas that are designated in green and in orange, kind of along the edges there. Those are permanent and temporary construction easements that we would need for this project. You can see a roundabout is just a little bit bigger than what than the footprint that we already have out there. So there will be some very minor right-of-way acquisitions, very minor little strip takes, 5 feet, 10 feet, that will be needed. And so that's what that item is, the additional right-of-way acquisitions maps and legal descriptions, because you have to describe each one of those areas and pay for them from those property owners. This is all conceptual. This is not final. We're still working through the design process. We're about 15% design.
10%.
10% design. So yeah, there's a lot more to go to figure out exactly where the situation is and what sort of property impacts there would be. But this is a good conceptual start. You asked about traffic flow modeling and simulation. It's primarily just traffic moving through, making sure all of those vehicles, especially we have a lot of semis that come through this area, making sure that they can all make it and make their turns and conflict and where those turning movements go. Passenger vehicle is pretty straightforward, but when you've got an articulating semi on the back, there's a lot of drag behind, and that changes the pavement that needs to be in the middle of the intersection. And then, yeah, I guess the other was additional design efforts that we're looking at. You can see all of the additional kind of work that you have to do. You have to do a little bit of sidewalk work. You have to do a lot more pavement work. Over and above, when we were looking at just a signal, it was primarily just the signal itself and just kind of fixing up the roadway, the road surface. And this is a little bit more work because of just trying to shoehorn it into the space.
Okay, thank you. Just so you know, the purpose for my questions were, as you look at this, I'm really just mitigating people thinking we don't, or that you don't have a good plan, right? Because anytime you come back for additional funds, it's like, well, what did we miss the first time? So I think that those answers are very reasonable, and I would expect that given what you're trying to do there. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
If I can just clarify one thing, the original design contract was just to look at a signal, and there was a line item there that said, make sure that this is still gonna be functional in the future and look at a roundabout. So when they did that initial, I'm gonna ruin the name, intersection control
Evaluation.
Yeah, they're engineers. When they did that, they realized, well, wait a second, if we build a signal here for 20 years, it's gonna be an F. If we did a roundabout, it's gonna be an A. So that's why we're coming back and saying, hey, instead of just continue with the design on the signal, we need additional funds to do the roundabouts. It's gonna be better long-term. That's what precipitated the change.
Okay, thanks.
Scope change.
Thank you.
Yeah. Barbara, go ahead.
So I have some concerns about the number of semis that go through that intersection, and will you build it big enough so that they can get around easily? Because, many of them don't just go to the right, they have to go to the left, so they're going around three-fourths of the circle there, so that's a concern I have, and then long term, what kind of surface are you gonna use? Are you gonna maybe use concrete like you have out of on 24th Street interchange? Because that seems to be more durable than asphalt, from what I've heard. But I know it's early days.
Want me to answer?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so the roundabout will have an apron mounted in the middle for the trucks, where trucks will be we'll be able to negotiate the turns. They can get over it and they'll be able to make a turn. Like Michael mentioned, for the cars, for the vehicles, it's simple turn, but for the bigger semi trucks, yes, there'll be a apron mounted in the middle where trucks can go over and make a turn easily.
Then you'll have a durable surface that's for that area. 'Cause I think that's important, we don't want to come back in 5 years and have to replace it because the surface isn't strong enough.
Councilmember Kenna.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both. I think like I'll just pull on that point that Carlo was mentioning is that just for transparency, as we look at that, we are spending a little bit more now, but with construction estimated, we're gonna save some money. And so, I think this is a win for the city. I'm a fan of roundabouts. And Barb stole one of my questions about the geometry and making sure that the freight had no trouble accessing the area because they're our biggest customer over there. I did have a question about Puyallup Street, and I'm looking at the dynamics of it here. And so the south portion of Puyallup Street, I'm looking at some Google Street View images, and I don't see there's a sidewalk. It looks like will be there on that very south, like the very bottom center point of that intersection. However, there's no connecting sidewalk east or west, to my knowledge, on Puyallup Street. So I guess I'm wondering, do people actually, walk around in this area? One of my questions that I shared with you all earlier when I was looking at the materials was just about bike and ped safety. And I'm a big advocate for our network and for how folks get around walking and rolling. And so just curious about how that fits in with this intersection and connecting to other parts of the city. Because I think on Puyallup Street, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of other walking options there. Is that right?
So I believe that sidewalk went in 2021.
Okay. Oh, there is. Okay.
When that site developed on the south, that Platt Electric is in right now. If you go through there, there's a big new building. I can't remember what the site was. Yeah, it's Platt Electric, but they I think it was the Duke Realty site. But that was put in a few years back, and so there is a sidewalk that runs along there, although probably didn't show up in Street View.
Yeah, this is from 2018, so good to know there's something there now for people to get around. And kind of on that note, was this a high priority intersection improvement based upon some of our analysis? I know we're talking about like the Transportation Benefit District, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. And we've got that nice map that shows where the hot spots are that need a lot of attention. Is this one of those that's been on our radar for a while?
So this intersection has been on the radar for a while. We've looked at this, whether or not it needed some sort of change in configuration. Ultimately, it meets some of the signal warrant requirements. And we had known that. And so we started talking about it and saying, hey, we should probably look at this more because of the volumes that are going through there, especially at peak hours. And it does back up pretty gnarly in the afternoon if you've gone through there. We took a look at this. We did a corridor study along 142nd about 3 years ago. And this was one of the priorities that came out of that. We looked at a number of different intersections along 142nd to say, hey, what can we do? Where do we have conflict points? Are we going to have signals in the future? And this was one of the main ones that was identified as a need. So from there, we started building the case for it and saying, all right, well, it's a capital improvement. We don't usually put a lot of money to the side. So we're applying for grants. So we got this, we have grant funding for this through like, I don't know, maybe the 2022 competition. It's been a little while. It takes a while for grant funding to activate even once you get it programmed. But so we've been working on this for years. Is another way to say it. It's there's a lot of focused effort and reports and studies that kind of looked at this intersection and say, hey, we need to do something here. And so this is kind of the first steps of the fruition of that.
Sure. Yeah, I look at this as a huge win because level of service slide that you all had. And I just think about the growing amount of freight we have in the region, in the country, but the accessibility for those folks to get in and out and carry more, heavier loads, longer loads, whatever it might be. 20-year outlook was looking not so great with that signal. So it's looking a lot better with the roundabout. So thank you both.
Anybody else?
Just a quick question. I see the design is funded, but the right of way construction is not. So what's the plan for the funding of this? Is it just street fund money or is it grants? I know it's a city street, so that's a big chunk of change.
It is. From a When we apply for funds for projects, we are usually constrained to apply for one phase at a time. So we applied for design phase funding and got design phase funding for the project. I would not be surprised if we are seeking construction phase funding in the near future. The right-of-way phase, we're hoping, is relatively inexpensive. So, there's small right-of-way pieces that need to be acquired, but look to see if that's something we can do with either local funds or some other way. But really looking at construction funding would be, definitely we're looking at doing that through a granting source. Whether it's federal funding or TIB or one of those avenues that would be interested in helping us improve this intersection. And the roundabout actually helps with that. Helps with our granting agencies. It's a competition, and roundabouts are kind of popular right now in the transportation community.
The other thing real quick, so it's 10% design. How long does that take? How long are we looking roughly, you think, for something like that? It's gonna be a couple of 3 years, probably, for total. I'm just trying to guess what but
We haven't talked any schedule with their consultant yet, yeah.
Probably about 2 years.
thank you.
Anybody else? No? All right.
The
Thank you,
next
guys.
steps, we'll go ahead and initiate the change order on the design, and then we'll catch it at a quarterly budget amendment.
Perfect. All right. That's it for you guys, huh? All right, moving down to number 2, Transportation Benefit District follow-up. Transportation.
Have a good night.
I thought it would end when my mother got her driver's license. She's backed up.
It's gonna go pretty much.
She's backed up in a roundabout.
Those companies are smart.
Nope.
Up here, I'm still seeing the old one.
That's the line. I'm sure she's right. Here we go.
There we go. All right.
All right, so tonight we're gonna revisit transportation benefit districts, try to answer all the questions that came up when we talked about this last time. I'll turn over to Communications Director Carmen Palmer and Public Director Michael Costa.
All right. Good evening, council. I'm back 1 month later. So don't worry, I'm not repeating the entire presentation from February. We will mostly go over the questions we received in February. But just as a recap to catch you back up, the staff recommendation is that you pursue looking at forming a transportation benefit district for all of Sumner, not just a portion. We recommend the 0.1% sales tax option that is available with a council vote. That would generate an estimated $800,000 to $850,000 per year. That can be used for construction and maintenance, and it is renewable after 10 years. Again, this is the only other repeat slide to help you what it would do, why we are recommending this. It provides a stable source of roads. It can be used for construction, maintenance, operation. We are very, very good at going and getting grants. But as you heard, some roads, Puyallup, that intersection is one that could maybe be used for grants, but things like, I don't know, Bonnie Avenue cannot, residential roads. So that's where we really do need a source of funding. And we'll go into that a little bit more, how you have been investing over the years, but the roads are deteriorating faster than the investment can keep up. So without further ado, here is that question. This is the updated road map. The sections in yellow need maintenance. Sections in red would need full reconstruction. And currently, to give a little reality check, because I couldn't do the math just looking at the colors, The yellow and the red account for approximately 10% of our current roadways. So the cost, if we went with a chip seal for the maintenance, the cost for what you see highlighted on the map would be about 9.5 million. And a chip seal would last 7 to 10 years. That does include complete reconstruction of the red. Same if you looked at an overlay that is slightly more expensive, but buys you 15 years, that would be about 16.4 million for what you see in the yellow plus full reconstruction of the red. Again, that's 10% of the city's current roadways. So you're gonna have to help me out with this budget. This was the slide you understood better than I did.
Yeah, so the 15-year preservation budget need, if we wanted to just keep moving forward with our standard kind of crack seal, pavement patching, chip seal, we're looking at basically $13.7 million. That's just what we have. And very similar to our current budget up there is $400,000 over per year. So if you say 15 years, you've got about $6 million during that 15-year period, compared to what we really would like to do, which is something more substantial at 13.75. So also looking at what the 15-year revenue is from the TBD that we've been talking through, that will just get you 12.75 million on its own. So you can see that, you know, if you took what we currently have budgeted plus that, you're going to be over, which would be a good sign. But I think it won't take long for all of this to escalate and inflation to unfortunately catch up with a lot of it too. So that's a little bit of the hey, if you're looking out 15 years, what sort of budgets?
I'm sorry, I stepped out for just a second, but also what's not included here is overlay, which is a significant cost. And I know that's something that we talked about a lot during the budget process, and we just don't have funded. So there's definitely a large need for street maintenance.
And this is also assuming, as Michael said, that future councils can afford to budget 400,000 per year out of our current funding, which we know those lines keep getting squeezed as our revenue continues to be capped. That was just our roads. I know a question from the council was about sidewalks. So this shows the existing non-motorized facilities. This is from the city's transportation plan from January. So you'll see there are gaps. This is what we were aiming for future bike levels of service. So there is work to be done, plans ahead. And again, we already showed that even the TBDs would just barely keep up with the road funding, let alone bike lanes, sidewalks, which you can use it on. And then continuing to go through, we've identified sidewalks currently with street tree damage. So this is the best assessment we have at the moment for the needs on the sidewalks. It does not account, that previous map accounted for missing sidewalks. This is just damage from street trees. This is the downtown. The map was cut in two, so you can see it a little bit better. This is the north end.
I'll just remind council that we've been budgeting $250,000 a year to fix the street tree damaged sidewalks. And that was a 10-year plan when it was originally adopted. And we are starting year 3 of that to address all these red ones. Just keep in mind, street trees are still growing. So this list is not getting smaller. I mean, it's getting smaller as we fix them, but it's also being added to.
Which is why sometimes we feel like the hamster on the wheel, just trying to keep up. Same thing with roadways. You know, the map with the yellow and red, again, was showing 10% of our roadways. The other roads continue to be driven on and continue to fall behind and continue to wear down. So there is kind of that feeling of this is a recurring problem to try to keep up with, not something that has a magic solution. This was a reality check for me. In my head, 142nd Avenue is still a new roadway. It feels like we just repaved that with grant money. We were very lucky to get. And Michael gave me the reality check that this photo with the brand new pavement was taken in 2018. So we estimate 6,000 trucks go on this roadway a day. So if you multiply 6,000 per day over 6 years, we have had 13 million trucks over this roadway already. And in my head, it's still the new road. So that's how fast they get the wear and tear and need replacement. So this is a repeat from before, just showing how the costs go up as you continue to lose ground from a roadway going from very good to poor to very poor. So this is just a reminder of that. One other question was to look at where Sumner falls in relation to the other Pierce County cities. So you'll see we are currently sitting at the teal there at 9.5%. If you added this 0.1%, you would be in the orange at 9.6%. We would not be the lowest city, but we also by far are not the highest city in Pierce County. Just to separate the apples from the oranges, those with the darker gray are outside the RTA. So they are already have a cheaper sales tax rate because they are not in the Regional Transit Authority or RTA. We are. I'm just going to check in if there's any questions before I keep going. I do have
Any questions?
Okay.
No, I think you're good.
Another question we received is the assessment for vulnerable populations. Regressive taxation is the form of taxes that taxes everyone equally, regardless of their income. So that means people with a lower income are paying a higher percentage of their funding. Both TBDs are regressive in nature. Sales tax is the same amount. No, you know, as you're shopping, it doesn't discriminate in a good way. However, higher ticket spending does generate more revenue and gross returns. Vehicle tax tabs, remember there was that option. You could, instead of a sales tax, install a vehicle tab fee. That is also regressive because it is not based on the value of the vehicle. It's just every vehicle pays the same tab fee. So that is also regressive. And in Sumner, it's not very likely to have the option to not own a vehicle. The one thing I want to throw out there is a little bit of a balance is what is also regressive is the impact of poor roads on vehicles. Someone gets a flat tire or other damage to their car. If you are already at a lower income, that is a bigger impact to you than someone who can run down to the tire shop and it's sad, but it's something you can absorb. I do have to point out because Public Works wanted me to be sure that is a stock photo of a road. That is not a road in Sumner. It was just a stock image to prove the point. Unfortunately, when the state set up how you can set out transportation benefit districts, they did not give you an option to not have it be a progressive situation. That would be tied to an income tax, and the state does not allow that. So you don't have an option that's not regressive before you. Reminder that what we're seeking is feedback, whether or not to pursue looking into a transportation benefit district. If you did want to pursue that, there's actually 3 steps. You form the district, you assume the powers of the district. You don't have to, but that's recommended. Otherwise, you have to hold separate meetings. There's more paperwork for staff. And then you would pass an ordinance funding the transportation benefit district. So while I'm presenting it as kind of one fell swoop, there are 3 distinct steps. And I'm just going to end with a comparison of here's where the other cities are in Pierce County with regard to TBDs. And you will see that yes, no does not mean whether or not they have a TBD. That means whether or not they took that second step of assuming the power of their TBD. I will point out a number did go with the vehicle license fee. Edgewood repealed it. They went there and then they went back. Steilacoom did, and this is where it's important to talk about the 3 separate steps. Steilacoom did form their TBD, but has yet to fund it. So they formed that district, but they didn't assume the powers and they didn't put in place a funding mechanism. And then Auburn went for the full where they went to the voters for a license fee, and it was repealed before it took effect. So not overly popular there. So I believe that answered all the questions that we heard a month ago, but of course, if you have any further questions, let us know.
All right, any feedback? Go ahead.
Yeah, are we able to go back to that slide that had the bike and pedestrian facilities kind of mapped in terms of high need or whatever that was?
Was it this one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the one right before was that pedestrian?
that's our existing
Oh.
non-motorized. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I will say the transportation plan does have a few more maps that further slices and dices bike lanes versus. I didn't want to overwhelm you. I did stick them in the PowerPoint if you want me to pull them up, but it was starting to seem like I was gonna cause more confusion than clarity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this because I'm sitting here thinking, when you throw out some of the numbers and some of the hot spots and problem areas, are there any ways other than increasing funding that we can, if we slow people's speeds on some of these streets or corridors, or we change the geometry? And I'm not an engineer, so Michael could probably tell me if some of those things may or may not work, but those are probably little spot treatments that may or may not have a small impact, probably not a large impact over time, especially you show the 142nd, and we've got trucks and vehicles are getting larger, even just for most of us, electric vehicles and things like that, heavier. So one way is to have better or more pedestrian and bike facilities that take people out of their cars and allow them to get around. I mean, nobody's probably commuting on their bike to a job from Sumner in Auburn or something like, maybe there's some people are, but I'm just wondering, what are those other things that we can do without additional funding that we can slow the wear and tear on our streets? Are there any tricks we got in the book?
It's challenging, right? Yes, faster traffic can cause a little more damage. But really the biggest amount of damage is either trucks or larger vehicles, and it's all about number of trips over time. It really is, really a function of how many large vehicle trips you've got going over your roadway. So this kind of gets pulverized over time. That these roads were meant to be there for a time period, and they just cannot function long term as permanent facilities. And so there might be some ways it's very difficult. I would say primarily we're looking at trying to take our preventative measures like the crack sealing program, like having a well-funded preservation program so that you don't get to the reconstruction portion of that curve. That is probably your best bet.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not supportive of the TBD. I think we discussed it, and the 0.1% seems like a good baby step in the right direction. And maybe that kind of keeps us, estimating into the future, that keeps us mostly covering all of our bases. And I love that we can use that for sidewalk, repairs or maintenance, or it'll absorb funding that would go to other projects to allow for other things. So just in my mind, that's kind of where I'm going with that. I think the last question I had is just, I know some folks are going to have questions about, more money being taken out of their pocketbooks. It's a pretty tough job market, economy, things like that. So I think I would really push us on the council and in the city and stuff to, if we do go through this message, we have to message this in terms of what is it like to live on one of those red or yellow streets, or to need to get around. I live kind of in a neighborhood that's got a few of those spots kind of nearby, but I don't have to drive on them every day. And I know folks in town that don't have any sidewalks, just the gravel roads here north of like traffic. And so really kind of hit on what it's like right now and how bad it could be if we don't get some funding, if we don't do these repairs. I've mentioned this before, but the state talks a lot about if we run out of funding for this or that, some bridges may have to be shut down, some speeds will have to be reduced on major corridors and highways and things like that. So really kind of leaning into like, here is what this looks like in 10 or 20 years if we don't do anything. And so I would just kind of note that for the future, but I'm in support of it. So thank you.
Councilmember Potato.
So if we adopt the 0.1%, can you increase that amount? Is there a time limit that it has to reach a level? What if we say like in 6 months, so we really need 3% or whatever? So isn't there kind of a cap on how much we can?
There is. So you can do the 1% by council vote. You can go up to 0.3%, but you go to a vote of the people. And I was just recommending, it feels like it would be a good idea to at least start with the 0.1% and see how that's impacting people, get to understand the program, and then in the future pursue whether or not you'd like to go for the 0.3%. That seems just a little more safe than going out to the voters on a new program with 0.3%. If they vote it down, you still could do the 0.1%, but it would be a little politically awkward to do that at that point.
Okay, yeah, that's what I understood. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ranky, before we get to the other end,
I was gonna just ask, I guess refresh my memory, but I know we talked about it in February. If we do this, don't you normally start like at a quarter of the year? You can start like beginning of a quarter. You wouldn't
A
start.
time quarter, not a quarter.
26, yeah,
So-
so-
yeah, right.
If we approved it and did it, we would start sometime this year towards the next quarter, probably or next quarter, wherever it falls. It wouldn't be 26, right?
I think
January.
we'd have to move pretty fast because there are those 3 steps,
Yeah.
but I think we could probably still make a 4th quarter.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Member Bowman.
Sure. Thank you. Well, look at that. You're just going right down the line. So I think last time I was, I wouldn't say fairly vocal, but vocal. I do believe that preventative maintenance is always the answer to saving money in the future. Having found this in, whether it be road maintenance or facility maintenance, whatever it is. So perhaps I'm gonna kind of pull on what Councilmember Kenna said. On chart, it's page 8, I think, but I don't know, ours is different than yours, but where it shows
Sorry, yeah.
the red, yellow, green chart. I mean, you know, for those of us that live in the city and drive a lot, it's the bar chart. It's your sideway bars. So it's got very good, poor, and very poor.
It's the curve.
It's the
Oh, the
curve.
curve. Got it. Now I'm with you.
Okay,
There we go.
right there. So the catching the streets before they fail, I think this is critical on just about everything. I mean, this, I would correlate this to a car. You might want to change the oil, and if you buy a new car these days, not only do you go in for an oil change, but now you go in for a 36,000 mile check, and then you go for the 72,000 where they do more and more and more. And so I compare this to that in terms of the maintenance. I would like to see us keep our roads up. You know, I'm in agreement of this. I was before. I think you've done a good job coming back and answering the questions for us. I don't really have anything that would tell me we shouldn't do it. So I would, if we think we shouldn't do it, I'd like to understand why we shouldn't do it. But I would say we would, you know, move forward. But I like this chart. The characterization of you spend minimal money if you are taking care of things, but the cost. And I think if you captured valid facts and data and went to from a statistical process, you'll find that that red line down there is probably about 4 times the cost of that green line up there. So that might be something you want to do. You might want to capture the valid data so that when if we do this, we can show that it truly is a cost savings and allows us to keep in front of things in the future.
We're usually seeing that red area is 8 to 10 times the cost of the.
Okay, well, I would show that. I think that would be a great way to show it's pay now or pay later.
Yeah.
And so, from what you've shown thus far, it makes sense, but you guys see this stuff every day. Some of us have experienced it every day in our work life. So I would show it in such a way that it grabs people. I would just suggest that. But thank you.
Thank
you. Councilmember Elvers.
Yeah, hey, thanks. I appreciate this. I've been supportive of it. I think it's great to be ahead of things. Being proactive is better than being in a bind. I think when government or elected officials come to people and say, "Oh, we kind of neglected this for a while. Now we need to do a big thing, a tax increase." I think that's really disappointing to me. It is a tax increase, but it is small and it is kind of before we're in trouble. So I really do appreciate that. The 2 things I wanted to mention is number one is that the sales tax is to me is the best way of dealing with cost increases. So if cost increases go up, the sales tax obviously is connected to the value of goods. So the sales tax revenue goes up, as the cost of inflation goes up. So this is something that hopefully we'd be able to do it, get ahead of the curve, and I like that in a tax that we're not stuck like the construction prices went up. Well, then probably the sales tax goes up, so we were able to keep up. So we shouldn't have to come back and ask again. So I think the idea of not asking again and dealing with it one time in a small bit is really, really favorable for me. The other thing I wanted to point out that I think I would love to see in a presentation, and I don't know if you're modeling this, but electric vehicles are very much heavier than regular vehicles, and they're gonna create a lot more wear and tear on the road. So the fact that we're already coming to the point where roads we're behind, and we're coming to a point where electric vehicles are becoming mandated more and more. I don't know what the timing is, but I would hope that in your modeling that you're considering the cost of maintenance. We should, as a city, I would love to see that we're assuming that the length of time that a street lasts is gonna shrink a little bit. I don't know how much, but I'm assuming engineers can kind of come up with an estimate, and I'd love to see that, because I think that would be important for people to realize. The cost of electric vehicles is more than, we're saving certain monies, but we're also spending, the roads are gonna get worn out quicker. So maybe we need to think about keeping the asphalt thicker, or just figuring out what that is, if it makes a difference. I'd love to see some thoughts on that in our planning for the city long-term, because I don't know, I forget the dates, but I know unless they burn down all the Tesla factories, we are gonna have more electric vehicles. I think that would be great to see, and the inflation adjusted income is also, I think, an important point. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Councilmember Cole.
So I actually like the idea of the transportation benefit district. I don't like the idea of Sumner residents having to pay more. But to me, this is okay because it's a small amount, but more importantly, at least in my head, is that it's not just Sumner residents, it's for anyone who shops here, anyone who drives here is probably, going to pay a little bit into it. Maybe they might stop at Fred Meyer or the ANPM or something as they come through town. So anyway, I vote yes. I'm in favor.
Councilmember Clerget.
Yeah, I'm in favor for it too, but being as I've been doing maintenance for 30 years, I'd really like to see it for the maintenance part instead of new construction. So that's just what I have.
All right.
So, thank you for that feedback. We will start taking the steps necessary, as Carmen outlined on one of those slides. So you'll see this come back before you, probably within the next 45 days, 60 days at the most. We'll put it on the calendar. As far as how the revenues are split, that'll be a future discussion after they start coming in. So at the bid buy, we'll start having that discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Bill Heath Sports Complex.
Just a bit, but.
What's in there? This one. This one. Everybody's been thinking at my mom. Good, here we go. There we go.
Okay. Next topic, we're gonna talk about the Bill Heath Sports Complex. Start off with a little bit of history. So back in the late 70s and early 80s, the city acquired all the land for back then it was called the Daffodil Sports Complex. It was all donated to the city from a couple different families as well as Multicare. And they were all donated to the city with deeds that require it to be used for playground or recreational facilities. So forever into the future. So in the early 90s, Rotary and the community raised funds and the park was constructed, and it was dedicated in 1998. In 2001, the city acquired through donation land from the Catholic Church to build the skate park, and it was opened later in that year. In 2016, The name was officially changed to the Bill Heath Sports Complex in recognition for Mr. Heath's dedication to this community, as well as leading the fundraising efforts to construct the park. A little bit about the park. It sits on 7 acres, includes a grass baseball field, a skate park, a volleyball court, which is actually on the school district property. We'll get into more of that in just a minute. A basketball court, as well as a tennis court that has pickleball lines that is also split between the school district and the city. A concession stand, parking. And I think what's important to note here is the primary users of this complex are the school district and secondly, Wolfpack football. There are some challenges that we've been dealing with on this park for a number of years now. The grass ball field is not as desirable as a synthetic turf field. It requires a lot of maintenance, plus it has drainage issues, being down in the valley. During the winter months, that is not necessarily the most usable field. Some other challenges are the shared amenities. As I mentioned, we have the tennis courts, the basketball court, which are split between both park owners. We have the skate park, which we're going to get into a lot of discussion about the skate park here in just a minute, but there's some challenges with that. The field lighting is old technology and it's at end of life. It's been at end of life for a number of years now. Just lack of general lighting. If you've been out there after dark, there is no parking lot lighting, no lighting that runs along the ball fields. It's quite dark, which also might be contributing to the increase in vandalism that we experience there with graffiti and broken bottles and litter and things of that nature. And then also reservation management. So years ago, reservation management was handled largely through the rec program when we were part of the Sumner Bonnie Lake Recreation Program. Since then, it's been handled through either a private contractor that the city worked with, or most recently for the last several years, the YMCA manages the reservation system, including unlocking the gates and whatnot. Even though they manage the reservation system, all of our staff does the field prep. So putting the lines down on the field, dragging the dirt, etc. So we talk about ownership. This is the challenge. So the city owns the 7 acres that are on the south side of the sports complex in that light green. Includes the baseball field, the concession stand, and the skate park. And then the school district, as part of the Daffodil Valley Elementary, owns the north parcels in that bluish color. And unfortunately, the video box is over that, but the circled area is kind of where we have some uniqueness in that the tennis courts, if you go right down the net line, the north half is owned by the district, the south is owned by the city. And then a little hard to see, but just to the left or to the west of the tennis courts is a basketball court. And about 5% of the basketball court, the southern tip or corner, is owned by the city. And we'll talk about some challenges that we ran into just recently with some improvements that we want to do out there that really brought this conversation to the forefront. Let's talk about the skate park. These are some pictures of the skate park currently. Knowing that we have some challenges with the skate park, we had a private contractor come in and do an assessment. Grindline is the company that performed the work. They're also the company that actually built the original skate park. So very knowledgeable company. They've helped us out several times throughout the years. Under the video box, you can read the Sumner Skate Park has, let me read it directly to you so I don't misquote them. Sumner Skate Park has widespread structural issues that require immediate attention. It's currently in poor condition and end of life. High level of wear and tear, needs major work to bring it to an acceptable level. This facility has been closed since November due to these type of issues. So a lot of missing chipped away concrete. The bowl on the north end has big cracks in it like this. We've already repaired this once. It was 22. We brought in a company. We did a bunch of mud jacking underneath it to support the bowl because the ground is sinking away underneath it. That resolved the issue for some time, but it's still moving. So you can see all the things that need to be addressed before we could reopen that skate park. So their estimate, just to deal with those things on that previous slide, is about $182,000. What's important to note though is that doesn't include any of the required drainage improvements. The bottom of that bowl is a storm drain and that is not functioning how it should be. So that would still need to be addressed. It also doesn't address the grading or other unknown conditions. So it really does support this facility is at the end of its life. They estimate a new skate park on the site would be about $1 million to complete. So a little bit of things that we've done. We're trying to improve this over the last several years. We've applied for several grants through the state, the youth athletic facilities, as well as the community outdoor athletic facilities. We were not selected for either one of those. I will say, we just visited Olympia last week, but I've also been watching the legislative session very closely this year. I don't see a lot of additional funds or grant funds being allocated by the state. I think that'd be highly unlikely. And even what they do put out there for grant opportunities, we have not been successful in the past. Nothing has really changed that would make us successful in the future for those. The skate park in 2018, you might recall that there was two parts to the skate park. We had the pro level bowl, which was a deep bowl. I'm guessing probably 8 to 9 feet deep is how deep it was. For various reasons, once again, that bowl deteriorated. We actually filled that in 2018. In 22, we painted pickleball lines on our shared tennis courts. And then this is the other interesting thing that I was going to mention on the basketball court. We've been working with Sounders FC for a number of years now. Their Rave Foundation, and they're trying to do 26 soccer pitches by 2026 to support the World Cup. And Sumner, through leadership of Derek Berry, was really, we were fortunate enough to be selected as one of those soccer pitches. Then we went to the school district, and we decided jointly that putting it on the basketball court is the best place. It was either there or another city park. So we're going to be the beneficiary of this funding that'll put a mini soccer pitch on top of the basketball court. But like I said, we own 5%, the district owns 95%. So that led to, well, who owns this? What type of agreements do we need? Who carries the insurance? We need to fence it off so it can be used during the day for recess, but also then be open at night. Led to a whole bunch of other discussions. So hold that thought because we have a solution that might resolve that. As far as maintenance impact, we spend about a quarter of an FTE year round maintaining the sports complex. It's just our portion of the district maintains theirs. That includes obviously the mowing, the irrigating, prepping the fields, weeding, chemical application, graffiti removal, repairs, vandalism mitigation, dealing with the concession area and the restrooms, and then managing the scheduling, because while the YMCA will do the scheduling, we still have to prep the fields, we still have to program the lighting, etc. So we were approached by the school district a couple months ago about some of their needs. So as you know, they have a master plan going for the high school that includes some multi-sports fields. However, they desire to acquire some additional field space. And really the sports complex is a natural location where they could easily expand and still be in close proximity to the high school. And what they're proposing is new synthetic turf fields. By the way, they already were planning on new turf fields for their portion on Daffodil Valley Elementary. So this would be in addition to what they are already planning. So new synthetic turf field on the city's half of this. Lighting, restroom and concession stand improvements, a toddler playground, as well as some reconfiguration of the tennis and pickleball courts. I really see this as, something that we always have as our mantra as better together in this community. The district needs some district money, plus city needs long-term to improve this park that is getting a little long in the tooth. And the benefit is a good community amenity. So going through this, I did a very high-level SWOT analysis to look at, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So as far as the strengths, if council decided to go through with this, it does address an underused park that needs some significant improvements and investment. We do not have enough funds to complete all planned improvements at the sports complex, let alone the capital funds to invest in our other parks that need work, like the Bennett property and Siebenthaler and Quesnel. I think it's important to note that most improvements at the sports complex are not eligible for park impact fees. As a reminder, park impact fees must be used to build capacity. We're not really doing that here. There is a little bit that we could probably attribute to park impact fees, because obviously when you go from a grass field to a synthetic turf field, you're using it more year round. So you do have some capacity increases there, as well as the lighting. You know, in my opinion, this is a significant benefit to the community, because absent this partnership, I don't see an anticipated timeline or budget that the city would be able to achieve these improvements. It also honors the original land donors and development donors, as well as the deeds. So there are some weaknesses. It does remove the parkland from the city's portfolio, which you might recall, we just update our parks impact fees. So this is one of those inputs for determining your park impact fees. You know, the park value is the numerator in the equation. The denominator is the number of users in the system. So then that results in a beneficiary number, which is then used as the multiplier based on either number of bedrooms or square footage for industrial commercial to calculate your fee. So it would have an impact, probably to the, depending on how you look at it, it would likely lower impact fees, but requires a study to get there. Another weakness, loss of the skate park. I think that's inevitable, whether you partner with the district or not. The skate park, without significant investment and reinvestment, is not going to be here. And then we also have a 30-year fiber lease that we entered into with Astound last year as part of our broadband initiative. The good thing is, though, that's also an opportunity. We've already talked to Astound, and they'd be willing to take that fiber lease and just move it to Rainier View Park, which would give us additional capabilities at that park for lighting control, security, etc. The other opportunity is any sale proceeds from this could be used for other park capital projects. And this also alleviates staffing pressures. Our Parks Department is also responsible for all of our trail maintenance, responsible for all of our street tree pruning. And when I say street tree, it's not just the ones that are, you know, on city property. It's everything in the right of way that's a city sanctioned street tree. They're responsible for pruning. So they are constantly moving through the city doing that. And the only threat I could come up with is really the public concerns about potential loss of park access. And we're going to talk about how to address that here. But going back to, if you look at the original challenges that we identified, I think that a partnership with the school district really addresses all of these challenges quite well. So if council wants to go down this road, it would require a purchase and sale agreement with the school district. And, you know, as we talk about what that purchase and sale agreement would look like, I want you to know that as part of our discussion on price, that is something that we discuss in executive session. That's not something that we will be discussing in this open session. So outside of a price, I think there's some things that at least staff would recommend, and we'd like to hear from council if there's any, what you think about this, and if you want to go down this path, what are some things you would like to see in a purchase and sale agreement that are non-monetary? Some things that we came up with, it must remain a park. That's a given. It's required by the deeds. The name must remain, you know, so that our recommendation is that school district still call it the Bill Deeds Sports Complex. It needs to remain open and available to the public, just as it is today. I think we should be asking the school district to prioritize capital improvements and not let, you know, if they take ownership, we should have a timeline that they complete these capital improvements. And that the skate park needs to be mitigated. And just to be clear, when I say mitigated, it needs to be demolished and restored to grass. So I'd like to hear, I'll quit talking, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about this.
All right.
And anything you'd like to add.
Do you know how much usage the public is making of the park when it's not being used by the school district or other organizations?
Well, depends on which part of the park. So we do have some entities that serve meals to students or other youth once a week. So I know the park is quite active when Mothers to Many is there. The skate park has been closed for a number of months. That used to be probably the biggest attraction. And then as far as the fields go, I don't know that they're used that much.
Do you know anything about the pickleball courts?
I do know, sorry, I forgot that. That is always used. Every time I drive by, that is very active.
So that, and I would think that would need to remain in the plan.
Yes, and I, you know what, I didn't really do a good job of telling you what the school district plans to do is $6 million worth of improvements, which include new synthetic turf fields, lighting, dugouts, concessions, a toddler playground, maintaining, reconfiguring the tennis courts and pickleball courts.
Okay, good. All right,
Not
thank
going
you.
away, but maybe reconfigured.
Anybody else? Councilmember Alfers.
Yeah, I have several concerns about this. I'm not overly excited about it. And in fact, I think one of my main concerns on this is that if this shouldn't happen as fast as the projected schedule. I think to me, this is a really nice asset the city has. It does need some work. I think it's in a great location. There's a lot of housing there. There's a lot of people that use it. I think some of it's worn out because it got used so much. So I think it's a great asset for the city. I think if we decide to work with the school district, I think there's lots of ways that partnership could work. I would really be reluctant to say that selling it to the city is the best, or the school district is the best option. I think I would like to hear public feedback before we entered into any type of purchase agreement. I think there's options of leasing or just use or different types of partnerships that I'd love to see. I am concerned about, some of the streets that are in the red that we went over earlier. Our Mason Street is really close to an F, and Washington Street is the one we're working on. So those are both, and the traffic is mostly caused due to the school district. There's actually a lot of traffic, which is because you get a lot of people moving. So I think that those are some concerns I have is if we do this, it needs to be in the benefit of the city. The school district partnering with them is great, but it cannot be, it needs to be a fair deal where the city ends up doing it. The other concern I have is when I'm observing the way the city maintains city parks and the way the school district maintains school district landscaping, I see a significant standard that is significantly lower. Or how about I say this? The city does a significantly better job maintaining their parks than I see the school district doing it. So I think that's a big deal to me. I think having the park taken care of is a big deal. So I would like to make sure that we represent Sumner citizens and that we have a whatever agreement we come up with, if we do proceed, would be something that benefits Sumner citizens and is not just merely like a handshake deal with the school district. It'd be great to get the park working and have more use of it. So those are my main thoughts on it. I just think that this is not a fast decision in my opinion, so I wasn't comfortable with the timelines. I think this deserves the public feedback. Once you sell something, you can't get it back, and I do think that the citizens deserve a pretty good amount of time to get the feedback on that.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, did I hear, so the benefit for the city, can you reiterate what the benefit again
Sure.
is for the city, please?
Really, the benefit is, I'm just gonna put it bluntly,
Mm-hmm,
I don't see how you're gonna make these improvements to this park without this partnership.
mm-hmm.
Or going out to the voters for a parks levy. Those are your two options. Because we have not been successful, and I don't see us being successful for grants on this in the future. Alternatively, you can leave it grass and leave the old lights there and the park can stay exactly how it is. But if you want to have the improvements and have it more active, I don't see a path forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kenneth.
On that point, Jason, any idea what the school district would do if we didn't pursue this partnership and they have this need for space? I know you mentioned they would still pursue some improvements on their side of the property line, but do they have a plan B?
I don't know if they necessarily have plan B. I mean, they've been using this, like I said, they are the #1 user. of the baseball field. That's where their boys team plays. They would probably continue using it as is, but be limited by weather and drainage conditions. I will just say that they are the only logical purchaser. It has to remain a park, so it's either us or it's them. Or I guess the YMCA might be another one you could write a creative agreement for.
Sure. I appreciate Councilmember Elper's concerns. If there were, to me, I think you've explained it very thoroughly. If there were a creative way we could maintain ownership of the property while also improving it, while also not paying for many of those improvements. I think that would be a win-win-win all the way around, but it sounds like that's not really possible. I kind of equate it to like renting a piece of property out to a tenant and then asking them to make all the improvements for you while you still maintain ownership of the property. That person's probably not going to improve the property while they're renting it because they have no real stake in it. So I think that like this is to me, it's a good opportunity for the city to pursue a partnership with the school district, be good partners, and the community will benefit. I think Andy's concerns on that front definitely, warrant attention, but I think the surrounding neighborhoods, the school, there's gonna be a toddler playground, it sounds like. So it sounds to me like it's a major improvement to what we could potentially do unless we wanted to pursue additional funding through a levy of some sort. So I guess my last question would be about the users of the skate park. I'm wondering about that community. Probably not a lot of other options for them around the area. I know of like down in Wilkeson, for example, has kind of an iconic skate park, but is that group, they just probably don't have any other options, is that right?
Yeah, the park has been closed now for several months. We haven't heard anything, but that doesn't mean that they're not feeling the effects of it. I started with the city in 2007. My first assignment working for the police department was figure out how to make the skate park safer and activate it. It's been a challenge since well before I started working here, and it's still a challenge to this day. There are skate parks in Puyallup, there's a skate park in Auburn, up in Lakeland. And our parks master plan calls for the exploration of either additional skate parks or pump track parks, things of that nature. So it's not that it's completely off the table in the future, just in this current location, it would be if we were to sell it.
Yeah, so I guess I would push, in the future, let's keep that in mind to make sure that, kids that are interested in that have an outlet down the road, and paying attention to whatever we cite that, if we do cite that somewhere, because it sounds like the ground might just be part of where we live and the climate we have and things like that, but don't want to end up in another sinkhole situation. So yeah, that's all I have for you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ranky.
Nothing right now, thank you.
So isn't there a plan for all the fields to be artificial turfed rather than, it sounds like other schools, their baseball fields use artificial turf, and Sumner is one of the only schools that still has regular fields. So I think it sounds like that they're making plans for quite wonderful improvements. It's also good for the students and also for the community. So at this point, I still want to pursue, the partnership.
To answer your question, yes, the district, that's their standard at middle schools and high schools is to put synthetic turf fields in. And I'd say cities around here, Puyallup has a number of turf fields, Bonnie Lake has a turf field. That's why we've been pursuing to make this a synthetic turf field. We just haven't been successful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, and we won't go into too much depth, but for those of us that got to visit Olympia on Wednesday, I am proud to say we do have a balanced budget in this city, and we have to work really hard at keeping it a balanced budget. So I don't think anyone's going to give us any money to do anything because I don't think it's going to be there. With that said, when we went there and observed the skate park, I have a great concern for safety. I've made it a point, I've been by that skate park quite a bit. That is a deep bowl. And I have yet to see, and it might just be the nature of the individuals, I don't know. I've seen virtually almost no safety equipment on the people that use the skate park, so I've always been concerned about liability. I know it's an enter at your own risk type thing, but it just takes one person to get terribly hurt. So that's a concern. So for me, no matter who owns it, I am all about not having a skate park, but that's me. My only other recommendation would be communicate early, communicate often, and communicate with the people so that of the city, so that those that feel they're impacted can have their voice heard and can be part of the equation when decision making is being done, right? I think that's really key. So that's what I would say. I am concerned about the budget in this state. So I think we have to be realistic when we're making decisions. So thanks.
Councilmember Cole, do you have anything?
Oh, no, not at this time.
Councilmember Clerget?
I like what the staff recommendations are, and just to pretty much stay with that, then I'd probably be okay with it as long as we took our time and have input from outside.
Thank you. Councilmember L first, then another one?
You got Matt.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I just had two items that I think are worth talking about, and I think Andrew might be able to lend some expertise on this, but I think there's different ways of partnerships, and I just wanted to reiterate that there are long-term leases where the tenant does the improvements and it's a 20-year lease or longer, something like that where it's renewable. And it's very common in certain types of, so land lease would be interesting, an interlocal agreement where you have somebody puts in money for the improvements, or maybe you have a purchase agreement that you have where they are required to hit certain benchmarks where you're saying, hey, this improvement's done before we close, or so certain things so to me, there's options of how you partner. I think it's important that the partnership is clear, that it benefits the city, that it has, I prefer to keep ownership. I think there are ways to do that too. So anyways, I just think the conversation it just deserves quite a few months of figuring out different options besides a purchase and sale agreement. That's one rate. But I think there are, Matthew kind of brought up a few things. I appreciate that. But I think there are some vehicles that we should talk about.
1 second. Councilmember Cole, did you have something?
Yes, not a question, but just to say that I do support this partnership with the school district. I really like the idea of it. My only concern is, and I don't really know how this works, and maybe it's just not an issue right now at all, but my concern is use of like the basketball court, pickleball courts, those kinds of things during school hours. That's the only thing, because I think people are probably using them all day, every day, and I would hope that that would still remain. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right.
Jason, just to follow up, the Sounders mini pitch on the basketball court, is that a permanent thing, or is that just through the World Cup and then they'll change it back to a basketball court?
It is permanent. So, long term though, obviously, everything needs maintenance. I believe it all back on the school district, is my understanding for that.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Let me go through the process, and this is a very loose timeline, but we wanted to start this because these things can take a while, and it is important to get the public's feedback on this. So once again, very loose, it's anticipated, but over the next couple of months, negotiate a purchase and sale agreement. That takes time. Meanwhile, also start public outreach on this. We included at the open house here in April. We put on e-news, social, get some feedback. And then we have to set a public hearing. So we have to do that by resolution. And what we're doing is you're setting a public hearing because you're doing what we call an intergovernmental transfer. You're taking one government-owned asset and giving it to another government, selling it, right, to another government. Then you hold the public hearing. So anticipated hopefully in June. Then we do an ordinance that surpluses the property, transfers it to the school district, and then execute a purchase and sale agreement. That would all be in one evening. And then eventually, shortly thereafter, you transfer the care and control, if that's what we choose to do, to the school district, where they would then take over the day-to-day maintenance of that and then start their capital improvements. So that's the timeline. At this point, any other questions?
Any other questions?
Maybe,
Mr. Kenna?
sorry, I'm very vocal tonight. Just maybe one other thing, just on the outreach side of things, which Andy brought up that point, Carlos brought up that point is, you know, you mentioned the Mothers to Many that uses that, I think that parking lot, right? So that might be a good spot, to double up on outreach and just go get out there and just, you know, see if any of those kids around there use the facility. Whether that's at the high school, we go to the high school and, you know, finding unique ways, because I've been a part of a number of engagement efforts that have not gone so well. And it's like you try your best and you can't get the community that you want to provide valuable feedback. So just finding ways to make sure that we actually hear and validate their opinions and thoughts, and positive or negative. But I just kind of thinking creatively about what we can do there. I'm sure you guys have some ideas.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, get what you want, Jason?
Yeah. Yep, good.
Okay. All right, so that brings us down to the city administrator report.
Nothing's, but one thing,
Okay.
you should be getting an email if you haven't already about the Daffodil Parade, April 5th. Just want to mark that we'll be sending out instructions if you want to ride in the fire engine. So just be looking for that email and respond to it when you get it.
Good. All right. Any council meeting agenda issues? Any issues with meetings or anything? Nothing there. No committee issues, nothing. Okay. I will adjourn this session at 7:27.
We have an executive session, so I need you to read the RCW.
Oh, yeah. All right, we do have an executive session and for two purposes, RCW 42.30.1101C to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when the public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. And number two is for pending or threatened litigation, RCW 4230.1101 and 8 and I. This will be about 30 minutes, did you say, Jason?
Let's go 45.
45 minutes, and the study session will be adjourned immediately after. We aren't.